Welcome back to Berlin, Germany. In week 3 of the LEC Spring Split, we've got 5 games filled with action coming up. So gear up and get ready for the best League of Legends Europe has to offer. Now, earlier today, we saw the teams arriving in beautiful, snowy Berlin. Luckily for them, studio nice and warm inside, so it should feel quite cozy as they get ready for their first match of the day. G2 and SPLYCE going toe-to-toe is going to be an exciting matchup to see. Everything that we could want from both of these teams could come out overall. And we're going to have to see what level they can show up and what they can do.
Can you stop?
How exactly they can come up overall.
I've had
For me, I think SPLYCE could just take this one.
Oh. Do you know, they sit there and they say, Quickshot, give me quick stats. I need quick stats. Give me a quick stats of Origin. That's what they wanted. That's what they want. They told me to do it. They told me to do it. Fine. Okay. Fine. Welcome to quick stats. I used to have passion. I used to be happy. For some of you who don't know, Deficio and I, have had a very long relationship together. We've got 354 games. 354 games of League of Legends. And before the relationship started, we were just colleagues. We were just friends. And back in spring 2015 finals, he asked me to kiss him. And I did, and it was magical, and it was amazing. And for 3 years, 2 months, 5 days, 22 minutes, and now 17 seconds, we had the most amazing relationship. We had the most incredible time together. And he left me. He just walked away. He just put it behind him like I was nothing. Like it didn't matter. I know, since we broke up, I've picked up 10 kilograms. 10 kilograms. Don't want that now. But I can't blame him. It's not his fault. It's my fault. I'll prove it to you, okay? I was told I had to do quick stats. I was told I had to bring it in. I had to do it in Origin, do it in Deficio. So the first thing that I looked at was just how much he didn't care. He never had my love for Drakos. He never cared for my wisdom, my intellect, my passion for stats and numbers in the game of League of Legends. And even worse, I found something when I did the digging. I have a relationship breakdown that clearly and unequivocally proves that Deficio was always going to break my heart. Look at the number of NukeDuck-related tweets versus the amount of time he came home late. And of course, you won't know how often he came home late. You won't know how often he ignored me and pushed me aside for pro players and professional games. But I do. I'm going to take you all the way back to 2013, the end of 2013. And some of you don't the relationship with Martin that I do. My Lunga, he used to be the coach for Ninjas in Pajamas. See that man there? This villainous, evilest, heinous man, NukeDuck and Mithy. They were on his team. They were on his team 3 years ago. And I thought he was just a nice guy. I thought, when you look at this next tweet where he says, hey, NukeDuck is sick, I'm going to go help him. I just thought he was a friend. I just thought that he was a nice guy. Take a look at this, 2015, going forward in the timeline. Our relationship is blooming. And look at this praise that Deficio is giving to Origin. Look at how much he gives them time. Did you see tweets to me? There was none. He did not love me like this. And on our 234th day anniversary, he canceled. On our celebration, he canceled on our anniversary to watch solo queue, to watch NukeDuck. I missed the signs. I missed it. It's my fault. But the evidence doesn't stop there. It just keeps coming and coming and coming and pouring out. Martin, he never gave me the time. He never did. But you know what it all adds up to? When you look at all the numbers, look at all the dates, all the tweets, all the information. Origin plus NukeDuck are home wreckers. Home wreckers. They destroyed my love. They destroyed my life. They destroyed my passion. I want my ice cream. So here's your quick stats, but I can't hold it against him. I can't. He broke my heart. He chased his love. He chased his passion. And all I can do, all I can remember, all I can do to not ruin the fondness is just remember the good times. And this is my ode to Deficio.
I'm going to put it out there.
Trevor? Kiss me.
Like no one before. Oh yeah, let's come together. together, put our arms around each other, be there for one another. What are we waiting for? Oh, life is too short. Come live with me. Come live with me. We'll be happy. Come live with me. Come live with me. We'll be happy. We will be so happy.
Why did you break up with Quickshot for picking?
I mean, this is an improvement in every way, pretty much. Yeah. Thank you, stage manager. That is probably the best solution. Thank you, Quickshot, for that insight into Origin. LEC?
LEC.
Okay. G2, they're still first place. They're 5-0, followed by Schalke and Vitality, two of our up-and-coming title contenders. Frost, please talk.
Yeah, the Schalke hype. Schalke have been incredibly impressive, and what's really impressive, though, is the middle pack of the LEC. It feels like everyone's smacked down in there, whereas G2 are still reigning at the very top.
And of course, you take a look at some of these highlight plays from the games yesterday, and you can see some incredible fights coming in from the Schalke lineup. Upset continues to be impressive, and I think it's a good look right now for this team. They continue to rise up, and potentially new top dogs chasing that second place alongside the other team I think we have to talk about, which is Vitality.
Yeah, and Team Vitality making very clear evolutions. It kind of feels like if you look at Vitality, they have like LCK drafts and LPL playstyle, and you smash it together, and we're trying to create like an LCK, or excuse me, an LEC. I don't want to use that word.
The hybrid. We're trying to make the perfect hybrid team. Combine the best strengths from each region, smash them into one. Well, a team that's been struggling, that hasn't found that hybrid strength, is Fnatic, but they did find their first win of the split yesterday, and I have to ask, you look at it, their team fighting, you look at what is a reckless Penta to get their first win. How are you feeling?
I mean, it feels good if you're a Fnatic fan and you wipe the sweat from your brow, like, okay, we didn't lose to Rogue, but this was probably the easiest victory that Fnatic were ever going to get. Now, good news, you can take away that Fnatic are still able to pull out the team fights. It's clean. Put it into your superstar ADC, let him put the pentakill. Bad news, there was still a really shaky, rough early game into mid-game transition, so still a lot of ironing left out for Fnatic to do.
But a good start, at least. Finding that first one going to be incredibly crucial. Now, going into today, Medic, which players are you looking at to put on a strong performance?
Thank you very much, Drakos. I think you have to start off by looking at Schalke's rookie mid laner Abadage, beginning the split strongly on things like the Lissandra. The German rookie showed us his versatility yesterday on picks like the Aatrox and the LeBlanc, which he absolutely devastated on. Schalke against SPLYCE yesterday just seemed to have their opposition's number, and today Abadage plays up against a veteran mid laner in the form of Nukeduck, and you have to wonder if he carries again today, is this the next EU mid we'll all be talking about for years to come? Sometimes you win the game as a team, and sometimes you just have to believe, and the three-time EU champion Expect showed us exactly why you have to believe in him with a great Urgot performance yesterday. His ability to smite steal away the Baron totally changed the aspect of the game, and XL were able to take the win against Misfits, the UK underdogs coming up big. We'll have to see what Expect and XL can do against Schalke later today. But last up, there's a bit of an elephant in the room. We've already talked about him. It's the AD carry superstar, Reckless, playing for Fnatic. Yes, yesterday he got a pentakill. Yes, Fnatic got their first win of the split, but it was only against Rogue, and you have to wonder, are Fnatic going to be able to keep this momentum going forward? Is this the start of a revitalized Fnatic, or is it a blip on a disappointing split for them? We'll have to wait and see, but for now, Drakos, back to you.
Thank you very much, Medic. I think interesting to see his eyes are on Reckless too. It's hard not to talk about them when they're getting a pentakill, but I think the thing is that everyone is holding back. They're feeling very reserved about committing to any bold statements about Fnatic, given how bad their start has been so far.
And the thing is that I think Bwipo yesterday gave a fantastic interview. By the way, I think Bwipo should just be in charge of every interview for every team. Very well spoken. But it's pretty much across the board. Fnatic recognize that there's a problem. They're starting to pinpoint it and clean it up. But the faith that he actually has in the team, he says that, they still know that they're good at certain things. They feel like their early game needs to be tightened up, and that's where it got snowballed out of control. So maybe it's also the meta punishing Fnatic a little bit, but they seem like with a high, I don't want to call them a tilty team, but a very emotionally driven team. Maybe this is the second win that they need underneath their sails to put them back on the right track.
And that's what you're going to hope for. Of course, if you're a Fnatic fan, on the upside, Rogue really struggling. I think this is a team that we want to see step up. But the other highlight that Medic brought up that I think is so fantastic is Expect rising up, this Excel lineup rising up. And it looks like across the board, a lot of the teams that started off sort of shaky here in the LEC are finally starting to find some of that footing. But of course, Fnatic is the team that we do want to talk about. We're going to see what Reckless and Fnatic can do tonight. They're going to be facing off against a struggling Misfits in our match of the day. So we talked about reserving. We talked about holding back, not doubling down on the rise of Fnatic, but they are going up against the struggling Misfits. Can they find a win here?
So the concern here is play style for me again. Fnatic have said it themselves, they're struggling in the early game, and that's exactly where Misfits are so strong. It's running through that early game and through the bot lane specifically, which means that Reckless and Hilly need to be on perfect form. Not just to let another Schalke incident happen again where they, I think it was like 0-12 in that game. So as long as they can control Han Sama and give some agency back to Nemesis, I think that seems to be the best win condition and way for Fnatic to tackle this matchup.
And I'm excited to see exactly what Nemesis versus Febiven looks like, but this is such a historic matchup. You look at all the times that Fnatic and Misfits have faced each other in playoffs, all these high-stake games that these teams have played against each other. I want to see how these new additions of both teams stack up. But when you look at it, I think you talk about the bottom side of the map, the man who literally ganks bottom every chance he got in Misfits wins is Maxwell, and you're going to be able to watch from his perspective over at twitch.tv/RiotGames2, his POV, to see exactly where he wants to go, exactly how he wants to set it up. But we talk about teams, we talk about strategy. Let's talk a little bit about rivalries as well. Tonight is also going to pin former teammates against each other as the student goes up against the master in the top lane.
Finding myself in that team instead of Soaz are big shoes to fill, but I wasn't looking to fill the shoes, I'm trying to replace the shoes.
Some people survive for the moment, no, we won't!
Hey, here comes the play forward towards Sneaky, the nice floating, what a play on a Whippo!
I feel like there's always been that kind of tension where, you know, you always ask yourself the question, what would happen if we actually play against each other? I mean, I don't know if he has for me, but I still have respect for him, right? And that'll disappear completely depending on how next week goes. Does he actually have something in store, or is it just going to be like all the rest?
But it's already 3 kills, it's gonna be the 4th as well, he's trying it by the time he can, but there's no way out!
He's good at what he does, I'm good at what I do, and Fnatic deemed what I'm good at more valuable than what he's good at.
A couple more autos coming through, the turret is attacking!
I don't see as me versus Bwipo. For me, it's me versus Fnatic and the management.
Quickshot slicing Maelstrom put into the just electrical doom room there by Maxwell and Soaz.
I think Soaz wants to prove a point by beating me. Not to prove something against me, but prove something against the rest of the world. But in the same vein, I want to prove the same point.
I don't have to prove something going against Bwipo. I don't have to prove anything at this point. I'm way past that.
2018 happened because of me and him. 2019 is going to happen because of me versus him. That's what I look forward to.
I love the confidence coming out from both these guys. You really do love Bwipo.
I
mean, you just
so
keep bringing
good.
it up. But I love Soaz's confidence. He says, I don't care about Bwipo. It's about me versus Fnatic. It's about taking down this team. I like the way this rivalry has been set up. And now for us, Misfits versus Fnatic, it's of course our final game of the day, but there is a lot more action coming up before that. Our first match of the day, G2 versus SPLYCE, we'll talk about later. But which of the 3 remaining matches stands out to you, Froskurinn?
I mean, for me, it's the middle of the day. It's 2 and 3, and I think it's because now that the LEC the dust has settled a little bit. These matches are now much closer than I think people initially gave them credit for. After Excel coming off of a great victory over Misfits, suddenly going against Schalke, that's a possibly top of the table matchup. And then SK versus Origin. Both teams are trying to find an identity. Both teams are struggling. SK, I think they're slightly favored here. And at the beginning of LEC, no one would have said that.
And we saw kind of 2 very good games from SK and 1 pretty good game from Origin as well. And so now I want to see where these teams can go, because it seems like they're both starting to fall a little bit down in the standings. And for Origin, it has been a very disappointing start. And for me, I feel like Sheriff showed us some good stuff yesterday. Maybe they can show more. Patrick, apologies to Patrick, my boy, the bikini bottom bot lane. How could I forget? Going up against SK, though, Selfmade just feels like he might just be unstoppable.
And I brought up this conversation about, you know, as some agency is taken out of the jungle, it means that you should rely more on your mid laner to be the big playmaker. If that's the main point in the map where you're pivoting around all the time, I think that naturally hurts SK a little bit. You know, they need Selfmade to be that playmaker. He's involved in everything. So we'll see if Pyrion can step up and kind of shore up that level 6 to, or that minute 6 to minute 7 jungle power window.
And it feels like there's a lot of contentious opinions on a lot of these matchups, but while we may have been struggling in the predictions, the LEC fans have shown up in full force. They are leading the race for Superior Analyst with 18 points right now. And Froskurinn,
what happened there, Drakos?
What? Why are you 100%? Have you given up on your own analysis? Are you just following the fans? Will you not take a risk on Origin?
No, have you seen how Origin are playing right now? Sorry, guys, but it's a huge execution error. You know, favoring SK over Origin, again, at the very beginning, I don't think anyone would have predicted this, but after seeing the explosive start and just the synergy coming out of SK, I feel like they're at least being proactive, and even though they don't capitalize on every play, they're making plays. I don't feel like the same thing can be said of Origin. I like the ideas, I like the direction that they're going, but the execution has not been there. Not in the individual lanes, solo dying all over the place, and not in the team fights, especially across from Vitality yesterday.
And when it's interesting, we talked earlier just very briefly about the potential for upsets where Excel is looking better as a team, but it's very clear from both the analysts and from the fan perspective as well that they're not ready to leap out and give the leap of the faith for a team like Excel. And Rogue, of course, down and out, hard to count them up in that matchup. But most interestingly, Fnatic not showing up here on Twitter. I know that both Medic and Shox have predicted in favor of Fnatic, as well as Foxdrop. So that's very few people actually believing in Fnatic, despite what was a very good game yesterday.
And you know, I was about to flip on it. I had a conversation with VODs, and then it just came down to this idea where VODs like, Frosk, do you believe that Fnatic would be able to beat Misfits in the early game in this meta, which is so reliant on Snowball? And the answer was no. I don't think that they're there yet. I think that there's still too many holes, particularly around where Broxa is attacking his laners. And Hilly and Reckless haven't shown that consistency enough in the bot lane. Maybe if we have more games like we did yesterday, then you start to believe Fnatic. But win or lose here, if Fnatic put up a good show, then I'll start to have faith back in them.
All right, so they're fighting for faith, but maybe not for the win in Froskurinn's eyes. That is going to be an important distinction. Of course, you can send in your picks at Esports on Twitter is the place. We're getting more and more people participating. Maybe that's why Twitter is doing better. But while the action...
Crowdsource it.
Crowdsource it. Crowdsource analysis is definitely where it's at. While the action continues here in the LEC, we're seeing a lot of innovative picks in the other regions. Froskurinn, why don't you walk us through some of them?
Yeah, and we're going to start with the second best region in the LPL. The LPL is a region dominated by its star top laners, so they've been rocking out with their Crocs out, and that's by bringing Renekton into the top lane. Now, with him comes the rise of Elise, and how this combo works is that you bring magic damage from the Elise and physical damage from the Renekton, making it exceptionally hard for the enemy top laner to itemize against you when they decide to dive you. Now, the dive's coming because you got the Renekton's dominant laning phase and the Elise's exceptional ability to juggle tower aggro. Now, meanwhile, it's a party in the bot lane for the LCK. Now, LCK has shown a massive versatility in their champion pools, playing Ornn, Galio, Nico, and even Jarvan AP support down there. Now, taking a closer look at the Afrika Freaks AP support Jarvan, the pick focuses around the Demacian Standard, which received a passive attack speed buff recently. In conjunction with the Airy Keystone, Ardent Sensor, and Hourglass, this budget Rakan can hard force engages and grant massive shields to an entire team. And finally, it's the LEC with the return of Yasuo. Now, since Lissandra is permabanned and Galio is dropping slightly in priority on 9.2, the mid lane champion pool has started to open up, offering more ability to get to those backlines. But more so, it's just the fact that we have players like Exile, those one-trick Yasuo ponies, and Caps, who made his name carving out with this champion, which is why we should continue to see this samurai as a fan favorite. Yeah, and maybe we'll continue to see it as Yasuo plays on our first game. SPLYCE goes up against... I can read, I promise.
You absolutely nailed it. Let's take a look. We have an interview with Lore with Duke, SPLYCE's head coach. I liked it, Frosco. You almost got there.
It was almost there.
And hi everyone, Lore here, and I was joined with Duke ahead of their games today against G2. Thank you for joining me. You guys faced Schalke yesterday and former teammate Odo Amne. Can you talk me through what happened in the game? How did you lose it?
I think we disrespected a bit in the draft. We were a bit afraid of Agnar Thresh, but we made a mistake in the second rotation where we should have banned LeBlanc. That prevented us from engaging. It was a bit rough. I think it was our hardest draft so far since the beginning of the season, and they could implement a 1-3-1 that we couldn't really punish in the mid-late game.
And you will have a bigger challenge today facing G2. How are the players right now?
We are feeling pretty good. The players have been playing quite well especially since the Origin game last week. Obviously, G2 is a really tough opponent, but we are still pretty confident in our ability to take them.
Yeah, I mean, from what we saw from G2 until then, they seem unbeatable. They may have some weaknesses in the early game, but where should you try to take them down today, and what are SPLYCE's strengths to beat them today?
I mean, I can't go too much into detail, but I think their main weakness is what should be their overconfidence. They are not used to be behind, and we saw even last week or yesterday that they are not as clean as they were on first week. So I think if we are not afraid of them and if we just play our game, we should just be able to punish the mistakes that they will make eventually. So yeah, we just have to stick to our game plan and try to punish them as much as we can.
And we will have rookie Humanoid facing Caps in the mid lane. How do you think this one will go?
And at the moment, it's really dependent on matchup. So it will all depend on the matchup we can draft. Obviously, draft might be it's almost the hardest part about facing G2 because they can flex basically 130 champion at every position. So we have to make sure that we can find at least some pressure matchup that we can play through in the early game. Hopefully we'll get one for Humanoid so he can display his ability against Caps.
Well, thank you very much for your words and good luck on this one. Now back to you, Drakos, in the studio.
Thank you very much, Laura. Fantastic insight coming in from Duke. Welcome back, Quickshot. I didn't think you were going to join us again. Did you have a good cry? Are you okay?
It's done, right?
Now you're good.
I don't like it, but I've accepted it, right? And I'm sorry about hijacking everything, but I need to get it out.
Okay. All right. So we're okay. But once again, really a lot of insight there in the interview. Frost, what stood out to you the most?
It was the recognition of, I think, he didn't use the word arrogance, but it's kind of been something we've been throwing around with G2. You know, if they have a weakness, if you're going to attack them somewhere, they can get a bit cocky. They know that they're a good team. You can see it in kind of how jovial they are. They laugh when they get on stage as they look for these dives. They're kind of like cat and mouse toying with you. And they'll sometimes reach too deep, have their hand caught in the cookie jar and be punished. We've seen XL do it, and we've also seen SK do it to them. And I think SPLYCE is also looking for that opportunity to snare that trap.
I mean, that's also in-game, and that's obviously the decision-making and the bravado, the confidence, ego, whatever word you want to use, right, for the G2 players. But I really got caught on something Duke mentioned. 130 champions in every role that can be flexed on you, right? So, like, not only is this team just insanely mechanically adept in the decision-making and their synergy in the go-ham style works, but you've also got to somehow find a way to bait out comps that they can do that, and then you can trap them. So they're a threat on the Rift, they're a threat off the Rift, and it is a difficult match for SPLYCE, but they have shown that they have the capabilities to at least go toe-to-toe, and I want to see how they're going to measure up.
This is one of those big challenges where it's not just a challenge for your team, but it's also a challenge for the coach. You mentioned 130 champions. It's like Duke can very quickly lose the game in draft, and we don't always say that about picks and bans. But SPLYCE are a team that are coming off of, a kind of a tough loss versus Schalke yesterday. Made some of these small mistakes, and Schalke proves that they're the kind of team that does not let you get away with anything.
And looked very confident in the interview. Afterwards, Momenta said that they felt like they were in control for 99% of it. Now, SPLYCE did make a couple of decision-making errors, but the thing that I really want to focus on is just this indecisiveness. They've struggled with it in the past, and I think a pick like Lissandra is so important for them. They need to get Norskaren on his Braum. They need to get Humanoid in some sort of hard-engaged champion, because SPLYCE need that big trigger, that big button that they can hit to force them to make plays.
And I also think it has to be at the right time as well. When you looked at the matchup yesterday, SPLYCE had a comp that was, going to scale particularly well. Maybe was a little bit Schalke favored in terms of early game, but the fight around Dragon, the fight around mid lane is something Verius and I talked extensively about while watching the game. The timing of those decision-making, the timing of when you pull the trigger also has to be correct, because against a team like G2, they're also going to punish you. So some refinement on yesterday, and that's how they increase their odds.
So just to confirm, you both want SPLYCE to go toe-to-toe in the early game with G2 Esports. That's what you're asking them to do.
You have to. You can't just give it up because G2 will end a game. They're a good enough team that if you give them any sort of leverage, any sort of snowball, an inch, and they will take the whole goddamn arm.
And I also think it's important to note that going toe-to-toe in every single lane, let's not kid ourselves, that's going to be incredibly difficult. But if you are sacking one lane in favor of another location, if you concede one step to gain two elsewhere, that is where SPLYCE can thrive. They've got a heads up, a cerebral team, and they need to outsmart G2, and that's what I'd like to see them try.
Well, it's absolutely going to be a tough challenge for SPLYCE today as they face off against the undisputed best team in Europe right now, the superstars of G2, who are on a 5-game winning streak. Honestly, this team is so good. Super team doesn't even feel strong enough. I feel like we might have to call them the Uber team. But it really just doesn't seem like there's any way to stop G2 right now. I mean, you look at their game yesterday versus SK.
It was fantastic.
It was so good. Like, what words don't describe.
Do you know what it reminded me of? I love seeing some of the absolute top-tier teams at international events where they appear to be losing early, they appear to be in chaos and messy and crazy games, and then at some point there's just this extra gear, this switch that flips, and the team just obliterates their opponent. G2 Esports fumbled a couple of kills yesterday, fell a little behind. I started getting hopeful. I started getting excited.
Someone's going to take them down.
And then Caps and the rest of the team just happened, and they obliterated. They still won the game in, what, 24, 25 minutes?
And again, it's just that realization. It's like, oh no, they've got Caps on their team. How do you deal with this guy? Because he doesn't just win a single lane, he wins the entire map. It was bot lane into top lane into Urgot killing everyone. It was disgusting to watch. Yeah. And if anyone can even force G2 to put their game face on, because we don't even know what a 6th gear looks like for this team.
Well, what really excites me too is we kind of start to highlight that matchup. I'm thinking the one man who wants to take down Caps this time is Humanoid. This is a rookie going up against the 2018 Summer Split MVP. Now, we heard from Humanoid. He did an interview with a shot caller with Darius. He sat down and he said, Caps is the guy I want to play against because he's not afraid to make things happen. I mean, we've seen it. We saw it every game. Caps is not afraid to go for the big plays. And I want to see if we can see that same spark from Humanoid in this match.
I actually think we can. If you look at his Cassiopeia games, if you look at his Aatrox games, Humanoid is a player who looks for opportunities to be a playmaker, to play aggressive and forward in the lane, versus someone like Nemesis and Abadage, who have been a bit more on the passive side about playing more towards those teams in those side lanes. So I think if anyone's going to be the X factor and could step up, it's Humanoid, but I don't know if he has the experience to do so.
Well, that's why this is a litmus test, right? This is a matchup where we can see what does this rookie player do? What does this revised SPLYCE roster look like against the current undefeated G2 Esports? And this will give us a good indication of where this team's going to land. The likes of Schalke and Vitality have shown that they are the big dogs in the league right now. How close to them is SPLYCE, and how good is Humanoid against probably the best mid laner Europe's seen in many years?
And really, when I look at it, Humanoid is in that kind of rookie of the split mid laner race with guys like Abadage. Abadage took the edge, but honestly, beating Caps is a pretty easy way to shortcut your way right to the top for them overall.
If you can do it.
If you can do it, and that's an important thing to talk about, because you mentioned it already, Froskurinn, and I want to highlight it again. Yesterday, the SK game felt a little sloppy, felt a little weak from G2 early on, but Caps moved across the entire map, and it felt like won every lane in a sweeping set of plays.
And that's the big thing. If SPLYCE want to retain their identity of that macro, chess-oriented team, you know, kind of dodge these fights out, then Humanoid can't just survive the lane phase. He needs to be able to take over the map in the same way that Caps would be able to do so, and help springboard SPLYCE into that style and that decision-making that they feel so comfortable playing.
And for me, I just want to see, does that put more pressure now on Xerxes to focus his attention on the mid lane? Is that what you're expecting, Trevor?
I mean, I think the Xerxes and all of SPLYCE have to pay attention, not make mistakes, right? That whatever draft plays out is going to dictate where Xerxes should be prioritizing his time. Good luck figuring out what that's going to look like against G2. But it's up to SPLYCE to not make mistakes. If they give any opportunity, G2's players will capitalize. So if SPLYCE want to hope, not only do they have to just play flawless at their game, their team comp, they need to then create some space or some opportunity as the game plays out. So I don't want risky play. I want control, safe, correct decision-making, and don't pick bad team fights at Dragons at 13 minutes and throw the game away like they did yesterday.
One final question. Percentage chances. Quickshot, I know you're a big fan. SPLYCE, what does it look like right now? Let's assume they get a good draft. Let's assume they don't cripple themselves there with some flex picks. What are you looking at?
I mean, I think a SPLYCE victory looks like one of their signature plays from the playbook, and it's taking Unsealed Spellbook on support and top laner, and then having TP on their AD carry as well, and then pulling the TP at around 12 to 15 minutes marks and playing that top side. So sack the bottom lane, don't play it, go towards the top side, and make it a tower race.
And what's the percentage then, if you believe that that's going to happen?
I mean, they almost do it, I think, 2 out of their 5 games so far, so not high, maybe 40%?
I was going with that too. I was going to say 33%. I give them 1 in 3 odds against Fnatic. Against G2, I don't think they're going to be much higher than that, so 33.
33. Well, I think maybe favorable given G2 remain undefeated thus far, but it is time to kick off a day filled with action as Europe's best battle it out on the Rift, starting with G2 versus SPLYCE.
It's Medi.
It's Vedi.
It's Medi time. Woo! Let's go! League of Legends.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
Woo!
You alright, mate?
I'm good, man. You're surprisingly light for such a man of stature.
Thank you so much. You're surprisingly strong for a man of your stature.
Are you saying I don't look like I should be strong?
Let's move on.
Let's move on. G2 up against SPLYCE to kick off the day. G2 still undefeated, of course, here in the LEC.
Yes, looking very confident. The man in the mid lane, Caps, is all the analyst desk could talk about, and why are we surprised? The man has been fantastic. And they're going up against SPLYCE today.